Okay, so Unit 10 or Chapter 10 in the textbook is very short and hopefully a little bit of a review for you. So we begin with just a lot of vocabulary words. So I'm going to breeze through 10.1 and 10.2 pretty quickly because a lot of things are, I assume you know already, but if you need to slow down, feel free. So, heredity is the transmission of traits from one generation to the next, and that's really what this unit is about. So, we're going to be studying how traits are passed on. When we see that traits get passed on, no two individuals are exactly alike. And so we see variation in the population, which is differences in offspring from parents to their children and even between siblings. And then genetics is the study of variation within a population and how that is transmitted through heredity. So you can see, like this family, for example, all kinds of genetics are happening. So 10.1 is just really about how this genetic passing on of traits occurs. So when children are born, they do not inherit exactly their own parents' physical traits, but rather they inherit certain genes. These are basically what we consider to be the units of heredity, and they're made up of segments of DNA. And these genes get passed on via the reproductive cells called the gametes. This is your sperm and eggs. So males produce sperm, females produce eggs, and each of them, when they come together, forms a cell that is going to continue to divide and has a unique genetic combination. Most of the time, our DNA is packaged into chromosomes, and every organism has a unique number of chromosomes. So humans have 46 chromosomes in their somatic cells. Somatic cells are what they'll use to refer to any cell in the body besides a sex cell. So any cell besides a gamete, which is once again an egg or a sperm. And then if you were to look at a chromosome up close, you would see that the same genes are found in the same place on all chromosomes. So for example, the gene for, say, eye color is going to be found in the top left corner of chromosome 3. I'm making that up, but every person's gene for eye color is generally found in a particular location. And there are so many genes, so many traits. The chromosomes have a ton of information on them, but that's just kind of a simple example. There are two different types of reproduction that organisms can go through. In asexual reproduction, an individual passes genes onto its offspring, but it doesn't include the fusion of gametes. So this is much more common in prokaryotic organisms like bacteria, and then some eukaryotes can undergo asexual reproduction, but basically you don't need the other or another organism to pass on your traits. A clone is a group of genetically identical individuals that come from the same parent. And then in sexual reproduction, we have two parents that give rise to offspring that have unique combinations of genes inherited from both parents.
Victoria, please go to 121.
In 10.2, we talk a little bit about how fertilization and meiosis occur. So basically, this is the study of the life cycle of a particular organism. Once again, we talked about human somatic cells having 46 chromosomes. This is because they have 23 pairs of chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad. 2 times 23 is 46, and that's how we get our pairs. Usually when these are displayed, they're displayed in something called a karyotype, which is kind of like an image of all your chromosomes lined up. The two chromosomes in each pair are called homologous chromosomes. So they're not identical because they came from different parents, but they're the same chromosome and include the same gene. So you'll get a copy of chromosome 1 from mom, a copy of chromosome 1 from dad, and that makes a homologous pair. Chromosomes in a homologous pair are the same length and shape and carry genes controlling the same inherited characteristics, like I said. So they're the exact same chromosome and they have the same genes, but what is encoded within those genes, because they're from the different parents, is going to be unique for each individual. This is a picture of a karyotype. So you can see here's the human's 23 pairs. Here's chromosome 1, 2, so on and so on. The 23rd pair is actually the X and or Y chromosome. So if it's a female, there'll be 2 X's. If there's a male, it will be an X and a Y, and then 22 non-sex chromosomes. This is kind of where you can see the genes are located, and it almost looks like those bands. That's where we find the genes. Here's the karyotype a little bit closer. The sex chromosomes determine the sex of an individual, like I said, and they're the X and Y. As I just mentioned, the females have X and X, and males have X and Y, and then we call the other pairs autosomes. So this is going to be an important distinction when we start learning about traits that are inherited. There's some traits that are inherited on the sex chromosomes, and we'll call those sex-linked, and then some that are inherited on your regular chromosomes, which we'll call autosomal traits. So in this case, can you tell if this is the karyotype of a male or a female? Yes, it's a male because of the X and the Y. When we have our pairs of chromosomes, like I said, each includes a chromosome from each parent. So in humans, the total 46 means we get 23 chromosomes from one mother and 23 chromosomes from the father. That makes up a diploid cell, which we represent with the abbreviation 2N. This means there's two sets of chromosomes. So for humans, the diploid number is 46 because we have two sets of 23, which equals 46. Once DNA synthesis has occurred, aka the S phase of mitosis, each chromosome is replicated. And then we have chromosomes that include two identical sister chromatids. So this would be after the S phase. So our diploid cell has 6 chromosomes. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And notice they've all been replicated and they're being held together at the centromere here. This would be a homologous pair. Notice they're the same shape and size, and they would include the same genes. So we've got 3 chromosomes from dad and 3 chromosomes from mom, which you can see the key here. A gamete, on the other hand, like a sperm or an egg cell, contains only a single set of chromosomes and is a haploid cell, which we represent with the abbreviation N. In humans, the haploid number is 23, which includes the 22 autosomes and a sex chromosome. In an egg, the sex chromosome is a X always, and in a sperm cell, the sex chromosome could be X or Y. So this is where they talk about how the male is determining the sex of the child, because the woman is always going to donate an X, no matter what. But the male can donate either an X or a Y. So if you think back to world history, when you think of Henry VIII, who kept killing his wives because they didn't produce a son, it was actually his fault. The haploid also makes sense for gametes because if you think about how to come together, you need an egg and a sperm. 23 in the egg, 23 in the sperm, they come together to form one single zygote, and that has 46 chromosomes. Fertilization is the union of those gametes when those come together, the sperm and the egg. And once the egg has become fertilized, we call it a zygote. And that zygote should have one set of chromosomes from each parent. The zygote then continues to divide by mitosis and develop into an adult with a bunch of somatic cells. Once you reach sexual maturity, the ovaries and the testes are able to produce haploid gametes, so egg cells and sperm cells. They are the only types of human cells that are produced by meiosis rather than mitosis. So gametes divide in a special way so that when you get the final product, you have one set of chromosomes in each gamete. Whereas in mitosis, you make an identical copy of the new cell and you have 2 copies of chromosomes in each resulting cell. Fertilization and meiosis alternate in sexual life cycles to maintain the chromosome number. So you get the egg and the sperm come together, and then the next thing that's going to happen, you get an individual, and then they're going to have meiosis, and then that'll produce more haploid cells, and then they come together and form a diploid cell that continues to divide, and so on and so on. So here you can see how meiosis and fertilization alternate based on what's going on. This is common to all organisms that reproduce sexually, but there are 3 main types of sexual life cycles that differ in when meiosis and fertilization occur. Gametes are the only haploid cells in animals, and they're produced by meiosis and undergo no further cell division before you get the fertilized egg. And then once the diploid zygote is formed, mitosis occurs in order to develop the multicelled organism. Plants and algae will exhibit a life cycle called alternation of generations. We don't really need to know the details of this for the AP exam. The next section is going to talk about how meiosis actually occurs.